Crystal L. Gunn, financial strategist, founder of the Amazing Woman Network, and host of Amazing Women Speak. And so every day, you get up and go out to slay the world, right? To work, to school, to do some shopping, to hang out with friends, or even to meet some new ones. And even on social media, wherever it is, you have to show up. But are you really showing up as your true and authentic self? Or do you show up with a mask? Authentic you or you in a mask? Does the destination determine the mask you wear? And do you even realize when you're wearing the mask and why? Do you recognize your authentic self anymore? And does wearing the mask do you more harm than good? So let's talk about the bullshit of wearing that mask and then how we show up as our authentic self. But before we get into that, please do me a favor, share this video. Someone you know needs to be a part of this discussion. So Michele, thank you again for showing up and doing what you do so remarkably and leading this conversation. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. It is my pleasure once again to be in company with some dope women, getting ready to have another amazing conversation. Facebook, I tell you every day, you are in the fastest hour of your day. I look forward to what we are going to uncover tonight. Facebook, I recommend that you grab your pen and some paper. You're going to get some tools tonight. You're going to get some resources tonight that's really going to help you uncover what it is that you've been hiding behind and how to truly live into your authentic self. My name is Michele Harper. I am the owner of Agency Fitness, LLC, where we invite women to own their agency through fitness, through spiritual blessings and a mind, body, and soul approach. I'm excited to have two amazing women with us tonight, and we are going to dive right in with their introductions. Kim, I invite you into the space.
So honored to be here, really, with you amazing women. I am the founder and CEO of Greater Advantage. That is all part of my spiritual journey. I had a revelation when I was working in corporate that the highest quality training and tools and consulting and coaching, it's often in the largest corporations with the top senior executives. So I believe everybody deserves a greater advantage. So that is my mission, my passion, and I'm also an advocate for beating burnout. And later I'll talk more about it, but I say mask off and mask on. So I'll have fun talking about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. We look forward to hearing more all about it. Jaime, welcome to the space.
And thank you so much for having me. I am Jaime Odister. I am the owner of TYME Consulting, where I'm a resource to the expert. And I just recently had to change that. It's funny because Crystal and I had to talk about that. But what it is I wanted, my passion and my desire, and I believe my calling, is to make sure people reach their greatness. Even when they don't see their own potential, somehow I see it and I'm able to tap into that and allow them to shine. And I'm okay with being a cheerleader champion for anybody in the background. I'm good with it, as long as you're good with stepping into your purpose and walking into that light and that divineness of you. So that's me, and I'm Jaime.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So again, fastest hour of our day, we're going to dive right into this conversation, and we're going to go deep right out of the gate, right? So oftentimes, especially as Black women, we put on the mask for survival, right? We're still trying to figure out who we are, but we recognize to show up into certain spaces, it's about survival. What was that first mask for you? And what was it you were trying to survive? Jaime.
Ooh, first mask that I can honestly remember would have been living in the South, leaving the North, going to the South, and realizing I was a Black girl that was smart in the South, that had a voice.
All of those things,
All of those
and
things.
collectively.
Yeah, and so luckily my grandmother was such, even though she wasn't educated, she was still a brilliant woman. And so when I would show up, she would never downplay me. She would never say, you're too boisterous or you're too much. She's like, baby, I'm gonna need you to let's figure out how to tailor the message for the people, because you're giving them a lot and I don't think they can handle a lot. And so growing up in a neighborhood that was, and I think this is the funny part about being from the South, people assume that it's all Black, but because I was right off of a military base, I had the ultimate cultural upbringing. So I met my first Arabic, I met my first Greek or Hispanic. All my friends were multicultural. And so that was the first time I actually realized that everybody wears masks of some sort. And then really trying to figure out my individuality in that, because again, I was around so many different cultures. I wasn't sure exactly where I fit in because I was blending into everybody's situation and enjoying it at the same time. But then again, not really understanding who authentically I was. So that will be the first time I realized I put masks on to be around certain people.
Yeah. Resonates in so many ways, Jamie. Look forward to hearing more about that. Kim.
Yeah, I thought I would have typically answered it different because I hadn't thought of this being a mask. But when you said the first mask, I thought back when I was 10 years old. And it's such an interesting thing because I feel like I knew who I was, what I wanted to do when I grew up. Just I was in my garage, being a teacher and teaching, my friends. But all these different things happened to me at 10. But one thing in particular that had me put a mask on was and I grew up in Detroit, 7 Mile, Wyoming area. And, it was a certain code of respect and a certain, this is what'll happen if, somebody messes with you unless you're going to be pulverized in the neighborhood. So I had a little toughness to me. And I remember I went to Bagley and I don't think most of my friends know this, all the kids started teasing me because I was quiet. And I can remember sitting on like the picnic table, like a bench, and they all were saying, she never talks and she's so quiet. What's wrong with her? And I went home and I decided, I was 5th grade. I was like, I'm either going to have to kick some or I'm going to have to start talking. In my brain, that's how I decided to like deal with what could have turned into bullies. And I have not shut up since. But it wasn't until, I got certified in all these personality assessments that I realized that I'm an extroverted introvert and how exhausting that is to have created an entire career, even though, I was teaching the kids in the garage and everything, but still I was a more quiet, reserved person. And I had to redefine myself and really understand that. But that was the very first mask. Number one, that I would kick the whole school's butt, but number two, that I was really quiet, faking to be, talkative like that.
Right. And in order to, like fit in or do the thing, you become a mastery, right? And so as Crystal lifted up, at some point, it becomes a part of your identity and you don't even know it, even for the parts that's not self-serving, right? And so at some point we go through this journey and then we begin to recognize that we have to almost code switch in some spaces, right? Like Jamie, that's what resonates with me around your story, right? Like they can't handle all of this. So I have to code switch for this space for them to be able to handle, or I have to downplay somewhat in order to get in the room, right? And so then we start recognizing we need not one, not two, we need multiple masks, right? Because of the multiple spaces that we're in. When did you recognize that you were holding more through the mask than you were about being authentic to who you are, right? Like when we come home and take it off, or maybe sometimes in some of our homes, we don't even get to then, right? But when we unadorn the mask, when did you recognize, like, I'm wearing too many?
Yeah.
I need to figure out who I am. What did that look like for you? Kim,
I'll let you go first on this one because I got to meditate on that one because I'm still wearing masks as we speak.
right.
I relate to that, because I'm like, how when COVID first came out and we didn't know what to do, so we were wearing all those masks, what I mean, couldn't breathe and talking. That was me because I didn't remember the one at 10, but when I got divorced, and I have to even back up because what was going on was, well, it did really start then. Going through divorce, I was working as a consultant, needed to go to work full time and got an amazing job, but they didn't know that I was going through the divorce. I never will forget my mentor who was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. This big contract that we had, I ended up not only consulting and coaching, but leading it. I'm doing all this, getting up at 5 a.m, taking my daughter over my soon to be ex-husband's house, all this awkwardness. And the lady was like, oh my gosh, you were so amazing. I had no idea you were going through a divorce. Mask. Then a little bit later, fast forward, I get hired by the company, the largest company in the world at the time that we were supplying training for. And I take a buyout to start my business, to finally really do what I want to do. And when I got the buyout, I was so exhausted that I didn't network. I didn't do, Crystal, you'd have been, all the money that I had saved, I had to spend it, just before the recession, because I was so exhausted and burned out because I was wearing that mask. So here I am ready to start my entrepreneurial pursuit, exhausted. And I'm doing all that, never asking for help. I remember my mother, who didn't even have a good sense of direction, said the car drove her over to see me because she knew something was going on because I had the mask on. So I'm doing all these things and I regretted it, because had I asked for help, put my hand up, things could have been different, which is why I'm such an advocate of burnout. But I was wearing mask after mask after mask, never asking for what I give, the help that I give others,
Right.
I wasn't giving.
Right. Yeah. So Facebook, we want to invite you into this conversation. What does that mask look like for you? How many are you wearing and at what cost? We look forward to hearing from you in the chat. We will respond and invite some of those conversations as part of this conversation. So please use that and take advantage of this amazing opportunity. So Jamie, what did that look like for you?
Now that I think about it, it would have been the first recognition of it was college. But I will say that's all it was. I recognized it, but I continued through it because it felt normal, because I went to a PWI. And so that was the space I had to be in.
For those that don't know, that's a predominantly white institute, right? Like, let's name
sorry,
it.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. And so that was the world I was in. And it's funny because my mother went to a HBCU, this is historically Black college and university. And the rationale that I remember giving her, and I still say it to this day, was, Ma, I have to learn how to operate in the world that they're in. I can't operate with just us. I've done this. I need to know how they think and how they move. And so that's why I said it would be high school, college was the first time I recognized that I had to wear a mask. And then it kind of just started morphing, because once you get into the workforce, you just start adding some extra ones to the situation. And then when you get into leadership positions, kind of like what Kim was saying, when you start going into corporate, you get another mask. And then if you're any type of leadership at church or in your community, there goes another one, because they like the mask that they saw you in there. So now you throw on another one, because now you have to morph a little bit. You can't be that total person that you were with them, because they might not be able to handle all of that thing. Like I told you, my grandmother told me, you can't handle all of me. So my mask ended up being just what I needed to tailor myself, or like you said, code switch, to be in whichever environment I was in. So yeah, COVID was the thing that helped me start taking them off.
Okay.
Because I got a chance to be by myself. And I got a chance to really look at myself and say, oh, I don't like that about you. I don't like that about me. When did that show up? And then begin to, because again, I'm not around people. So I had an opportunity just really to work with myself and say, she's a little harsh. So let's save her. We need her in some instances, but she doesn't need to be your full, she doesn't need your undivided and full attention. And so I started removing some of the mask during COVID, but the first recognition was high school, college, believe it or not.
Wow. Yeah, that's Jamie, again, so much about what you're sharing resonates with me. It almost verbatim sounds like words and conversations that I had with my daughter about her choice to go to Michigan State versus her dad saying, like, I want you to go to an HBCU, right? And so really having to pay attention to this big old world that you're trying to navigate, and knowing already the obstacles and the barriers as a Black woman that you're gonna face, that we just put on masks, right? Like literally, like we're putting on lipstick or putting on our shoes to go out of the door, and don't even recognize that we're suffocating, right? Like we learn to breathe different. We just take shallow breaths, as opposed to, right? Like if I just take one off, if I take two off. So when did that begin to happen, right? Like I'm suffocating, and this is no longer working for me. when did that recognition come? Jamie, I heard you say, right, like COVID caused you to slow down. It gave you an opportunity you didn't even know that you needed, right? Kim, what did
It
that
was,
look like for you? Was that COVID? Oh, go ahead, Jamie, please.
no, I was gonna say, going back to kind of what Kim was saying, COVID, I used to have back problems. And I always thought I attribute my back problems to, I was helping my dad when he was ill. It was what Kim was talking about. It was burnout. I
Mhm.
was so stressed and didn't even realize what stress looked like, because I'm 25, 26. I'm not stressed. I have the world. I have all the good stuff. I have a good job. I'm out here doing it. But my body was breaking down. And like you said, my breathing, I didn't even realize until I went to physical therapy. I was taking shallow breaths. I didn't even know what a deep breath was
Mhm.
until I had to go through exercise. And he was like, I'm gonna need you to go to yoga or Pilates. You're not breathing. And I was like, I am breathing. I'm talking to you. I'm making. He's like, Jamie, you're not breathing. Your
Wow.
lungs aren't even getting the capacity of air that you could possibly do. He said, have you swim lately? Like, do you get winded by the time you get, do you make it? He's like, do you make it down to the end of the pool? And I was like, no, I get like 2 strokes in and I'm done. And he was like, you're not breathing. So I need you to learn how to work on your breath. And so through COVID and through my back issues, and I no longer have those, I thank my PT and my new coach. I've learned how to breathe, and I've learned how to allow the world around me to just accept me. And if you can't, then you're not my cup of tea, and I'm okay with that. Peace. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kim.
Oh, that was great. I had to think about it anyway. We were tag teaming on thinking, like I got to pause on that one, because it was really when, after losing everything, because I had the masks on and then being literally wiped out after the recession, that, I mean, when you lose everything, you just learn. You attempt to learn. Although I found myself in a similar situation, I ended up moving to New York, started my business, still couldn't quite get it off the ground, obviously, because of recession and everything. And then when I moved to New York, I was working for a coaching company. And I always say we can be, as amazing women, trapped by our own success. I'm trying to reframe the wording around that, but I will tend to go somewhere and say, I just want to be a coach. I just want to be a trainer. And every time I end up in a leadership position.
Mm-hmm.
And here it happened again. And I was working for a bully boss, although he respected me because I just said 7 Mile, Wyoming one day. I was like, you better not talk to me that way. But then he talked to everybody else that way, and it was still painful. So I'm working for a bully boss. And I remember finally saying, let me go talk to like the EAP people. Like, I need some help, because I felt, and long story short, really circle around, I discovered my great-great-grandfather's narratives of when he was enslaved. And that's a whole nother topic you have to have me back on for. But seeing that my great-great-grandfather set himself free at 16 years old, being enslaved, I was in the middle of like coming out in a Harriet Tubman way. And I remember I called the EAP, and the counselor said, like, be your own best friend. Like, what would you tell your coaching clients to do that now that you're burned out, working for a bully boss, got a mask on, trying to hold it all together for everybody, for everybody else, being this leader, literally at that point had hair loss. That's why I have a buzz cut. I would love to say I have it because, I just wanted to have a buzz cut, but I was having hair loss because of stress, mask on. And I never will forget, one of my coworkers or person, team members said, but it looks cute when you have that wrap around your head. And I'm like, yeah, but not because it's coming out because of stress. A mask. We can have a head wrap on and it's a mask. So when the person said, be your own best friend, it just triggered something in me. And I have not stopped doing that. And I say that to say, and maybe we can unpack this a little bit later, I have a different definition of imposter syndrome. Not trying to fake so nobody finds out you don't know what you know. It's when you don't do the things that you give others to do and you don't apply them for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest masks.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say, Jamie?
I said that we are the biggest hypocrites. We become the biggest hypocrites.
Yeah. So that was when I really just ripped it off like the bra, girl. Pop.
So so really being a Black woman is exhausting. I mean, I wouldn't change it in the world, for anything in the world. I love being a Black woman because of how dope and all of the different levels and layers that we have, right? But we have to maneuver in so many spaces And again, all of the different masks that you really can wind up losing who you are. But why do we feel like we have to wear the masks? Like, because you don't walk in and someone says, oh, you have to, here, put this mask on. We do it, right? So why do we feel like we have to wear the mask in the first place?
But you know what, I want to speak to this because I really think that just like with the COVID analogy, I mean, some people did believe in it, some people didn't. Even some medical doctors were saying, y'all just doing that. Well, I'm like, well, it helps us get over post-traumatic stress, just putting it on and feeling safer. But I remember I had a coaching client once, and it was a woman. And she said to me that she wasn't a Black woman, it was a white woman, but she was like, I'm now in the big company and I'm the only woman, and it was all men. And she's like, I'm one of those people that emotionally cry sometimes, not because I'm scared, just, that's what happens. And I need to be able to tell my team members, all white males, that I'm scared. This boss makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know. Should I to tell these men this? And honestly, in the environment that we were in, I was like, no, girl, However, you can't get so lost that you always have the mask on, that you have the mask on at work. You don't have a therapist to talk to, a coach to talk to, a best friend to talk to, in your prayer closet. Like if you're wearing the mask and then trying to fake it with everybody. But to be truthful, Crystal, there are environments. I just said, as a Black woman growing up 7 Mile, Wyoming, I can't just walk around exploding like I was taught to survive in my neighborhood. I had to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Is that a mask? I don't know. That's how I'm navigating. So I believe that in some instances, look, I grew up in a house with my father. My mother was like, Dad's coming home now, be quiet. That's a mask.
It is.
So, I mean, in some ways we do have to. A mask can save your life, save your job, save your marriage for a while. I can't stand, I mean.
But is there a point where—
Edit that part, no, I'm kidding.
Right. Is there a point though when, because we've had to wear so many masks, that we really forget who we are?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then where's that thin line that you're like, okay, you know what? Y'all really about to just get me. Or, 1 or 2 masks and not 5 to 10 masks, because we do. And I know we have to maneuver these places, but when does it become too much?
I'm going to share a definition because it was such an amazing, I didn't even know how to explain it on Facebook today, because I was like, church today, e-church. I go to TD Jakes e-church and
wasn't he on fire today?
And it was about the mask.
It
And I was like, okay, hello. I know that this is meant to be, because one of the things about my coaching platform, and Jamie said it also, is greater advantage really is you get the greatest advantage with your faith, whatever faith you have. And so I was so excited because he talked about the fact that, I had to write it down, that the word hypocrite actually is when you break it on down and go to the Greek version and all that, it's about the mask and being an actor. But then I found, Jamie, I went and, broke it on down, and one author wrote down hypocrisy as an emotional defense mechanism that you've adopted to protect yourself from experiencing further pain. And that allows us as amazing women not to even make you feel bad about the mask that you wear. So where we get in trouble, I think, is when it is masking that hurt, that pain, and we are not healing. Once you heal, then you can say, like we all do now, I'm going to keep my mask in my purse. So if somebody's coughing or something, I'm going to put it on. But if I don't have to wear it, then I'm not going to. And it's going to be it's going to be an N95 mask, not some cloth. I mean, we can be much more educated on what mask, when to put it on, when to take it off.
And I agree with that. And I think the exhausting thing about knowing when to take it off is I think it's based on each person and what your tolerance is. And so it gets to that point where you're looking like I said, for me, I couldn't breathe. I didn't realize I wasn't breathing. But I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I no longer want to live this way. And so that thing that my grandmother told me, it was kind of right, kind of wrong. And I think that's the thing that as women, we do that too, is that we take everybody's lessons and we kind of discern them the way we think that it's supposed to go, because nobody really has, I mean, this life is trial and error. And so I think that's what the masks are too. It's a trial and error. So if I've been hurt in one particular instance, I mask up because I don't want to feel that again. And I'm not going to experience that again. So mask up. And then when I go into a different situation with the mask up, not realizing it's not the same person. And I think that's where it gets to be the thing, is because we're dealing with situations, not realizing the situations are people, not the same scenario. It's the person that I really need to mask up against, not the entire situation of the person. And so I think that's what gets tiring, because you just, I mean, you take all the situations and you mask up via the situation versus masking up against the tyrant who was the one that really did it to you, not everybody that's been around you. It's that becomes tiring, because then you start overthinking.
Like I saw a woman the other day at this point wearing her mask outside. You know what I mean? I'm going like, she's really scared. You know what I mean? Like, she is seriously petrified. But I know some people, some of my clients who really, and a couple of my best friends who think everybody has it together.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think that everybody has it together because they're wearing a mask, to me, that's when the real danger comes in. So we're not only hurting ourselves by putting that mask on in some cases, like we're just like messing up other women, because women think, and us as coaches and counselors and advisors, we know people don't have it together. But when everybody is faking it, very smart, intelligent women can think that everybody has it together.
Well, I mean, that's that
Right,
bad
like we've
cliche.
been socialized to show up that way, right? And there's a
Yep.
cost. A lot of it is assumed, but there's a cost to being vulnerable, right? Like to being that kind of raw and stripped down, even knowing that there is an advantage to be had for somebody else to see you go through, right? But we've been socialized. We've got to show up, put together, be strong, right? And so in spaces, Black women don't get permission to cry, where our white counterparts can cry in a meeting and she's consoled and all of that, right? So we, right, like out of our socialization, out of our need for survival, we put on these masks, and then we forget who we are, right? Because it becomes so second nature to us that we continue to show up in the way that we've been socialized to. The concern is, can we recognize ourselves, right? Like, who stands in the mirror when you peel them all off? Or have they now become a part of your identity because you've been so used to wearing them, because you needed to survive, right? Like, it really is that really thin line of what, like Kim, you referenced, like, I need to put this on. This is about survival, right? Versus I'm placing this mask on to cover up a hurt, Jamie, much to your point, right? Without recognizing that if I just tried on being me in this space, right? Like, what's the risk? What's the cost? And oftentimes, because we've been hurt, we don't even want to assume any level of risk. So we walk in and you're going to get the leftovers from the hurt, from the pain, because I've masked up even before I walked in the room, right? There's a cost to that. There's a cost to that, right?
Well, Michelle, I think we've also bought into that whole culture of fake it till you make it.
Hmm.
And it's so sad, because there is no such thing as that. It's either you can or you won't. And there is no show up and you just assume that you can do something. That's like me showing up to your house and saying I'm a plumber, and I see the water is coming out your faucet, and I have not nan tool in my hand to stop the water coming from out your faucet. That is not a fake it till make it moment. That is being so unrealistic and untrue to yourself. I would never tell even my nieces, I love them dearly, I would never tell another grown woman or a young woman, fake it till you make it. No, pursue, work, learn, be a master. And I also don't like, what is it, jack of all trade, master of none. I don't like that one either. There are certain cliches it's like I cringe my teeth, because it's just like, stop telling people that, because that makes you feel as if the gifts that if I have an abundance of gifts, it makes me feel as if I expose more than one, and I'm really good at more than one, then I'm not supposed to be able to show that to the world. And that is so unfair because like I have an 11-year-old, she is brilliant at math and art. Why would I make her choose one or the other?
Right.
That's ignorant to me. But that's what was taught to us, is that you got to fake it till you make it, and you can't be a jack of all trades because you're gonna be a master of none. Like, who comes up with these things? It's a whole bunch of unlearning that really needs to happen. And that's really, I'm glad we're having this conversation because that's in my church too. I'm gonna take a sip of water on that one. I'm gonna let Kim or somebody else go.
You just said a mouthful because we didn't talk about the fact that sometimes we wear masks to hide our greatness. I mean, and sometimes, like I said, I just was telling Crystal that I just got a contract as a sleep coach now, and I have put a different kind of mask on. I'm like, I don't care how great I get. Do not promote me in this company. I do not want to be a leader. I just want to chat coach. This is a side gig for me. And then I still find myself showing up. Some of my coworkers are going like, we just are so glad that in the meeting you speak your mind and you say the things that we all want to say. I'm like, don't promote me, please don't. And all the leaders are like, thank you. And I'm like, stop it, Kim. So you're talking about like even putting the mask to like shrink down now. That's a different version of it. But sometimes people do it because they really are uncomfortable with like, what if you do speak up too much? If you're a Black woman at the table and you speak up too much. I have a friend that had to stop speaking up so much because they were like, we don't care about your corporate background that you had and this, that. And she sounded like she was showboating when she just simply was showing up to be who she is.
So when does it do us a disservice? And how do we know? I think that's the biggest piece. We put on a mask because we have to. And yep, that's how we're going to survive. That's how we're going to make it through whatever this thing is that we're trying to make it through. But when is it doing us a disservice? And how do we know so that we can self-correct? Anybody?
You see, look, you see me, but we all blinking slow because it's like
blink twice if you need help. I think if you're not asking one aspect of it, there's so many. I mean, if you are in an unhealthy, unsafe relationship and you got a mask on and it's truly, or with a bully boss and you're in a situation and you've got a mask on. I mean, there's some unsafe aspects of the mask. Then there's some unproductive aspects of the mask. If I don't have financial acumen and I don't have the nerve to say it so that somebody like Crystal can help me, then you're being unproductive. You're not asking for the help. Think about how many of us are advisors and we have all this knowledge, and many of our friends sit in silence and suffer and don't take advantage of it. If we aren't willing to do that, we're not going to get from A to Z or even A to C.
So how do we coach women, right? Like, so we recognize, and we've talked a little bit about, right, we masking our greatness for whatever reason, or masking in order to survive, right? Like, we know that those things exist. But when we're putting on a mask, right, that is downplaying our ability to show up and be great, right? Out of fear, right? Like, how do you do that? What's the measure, right? Like, what's the risk am I willing to take? Because I keep showing up to the ways that I've been socialized to show up, and they're not working for me. I am not allowed to be my authentic self. And today's the day I've decided I want to. What's the level of risk, right? Like that always has to be measured, right? Like, I can't necessarily go to my job and show up as my authentic self if I need that income to provide for my family, right? Like, so that's the extreme. But there's some spaces where we continue to choke down who we are, right? And aren't living out of the greatness. How are we coaching folks that we come in contact with? How are we advising those women to let that part go, right? Like, again, we understand the other mask, but the one that's keeping you from being authentic, that's costing you. How are we coaching and advising those women? And I'll start taking notes.
Amy, you're taking it, right? Look, I can give you one example real quick.
Go ahead, because I got one, but
all right. I have a sorority sister, and she came to me for coaching, right? And high up in corporate, big company. And it was so interesting because she's a Black woman, and she was saying that all the people in her company are being vulnerable. And it was during COVID, and they were sharing their authentic self from their Zoom, telling their stories. It was definitely around George Floyd and all the things that were going on. And everybody was speaking out. And she wasn't speaking out. She felt like she couldn't. And it was interesting because she's from the project. She grew up in the projects. And I remember when we were just looking at her life and her story, and I said, have you ever told anybody that? She's like, oh, no. I'm like, you haven't? And I'm like, but you know what? That's really what makes you great. What makes you great is just that you're a Black woman that has this position. What makes you amazing is that you started from the bottom, now you're here. Like, that's what's really amazing about your story. So what I coached her on was just start telling that story somewhere. She had this mentor group that she supported. And I said, how about you tell them the story? And then she started telling them the story. She had to feel safe. So I think we have to look at why we're not doing it and then just go tell somebody, hey, I'm not great at financial acumen, or hey, I came from the projects, or hey, I'm, whatever level of coming out, you're coming out. Like, tell somebody and then test it out, maybe.
Now, mine's is a little different, and this is gonna sound so bad, and I'm gonna try to be PC. So
Politically correct, no.
I'm sorry, I'm using acronyms. I'm sorry, people.
No.
I'm in the work world way too much. So my coworker, same thing during the George Floyd situation, and my company decided they wanted to, of course, do diversity, inclusion, and equity training. And one of my coworkers, God bless her heart, I will leave her nameless. She is a Anglo-Saxon woman, and she was trying to feel her responsibility in this. And because my husband calls me the white whisperer, I ended up being her friend in this situation to coach her through, because she wanted to understand why it happened. And she couldn't really grasp what was going on and why it got to be. So I had to explain, I had to put George Floyd, I literally put George Floyd into I said, imagine that was me walking down Minnesota, because my headquarters is in Minnesota, go figure.
Oh, wow.
And I said, imagine me going to the store. I just left you off from a meeting. I was going to the corner store. I'm trying to pay for something and I get harassed. Would your immediate thought when you saw me on the news, would you immediately go to my background, or would you go to what you know about me now? And she had to stop herself, and she was like, well, I know you, Jaime. I mean, you're good. You're here at work and you're a nice person. I said, so why do you think it's okay for the media to go back into this man's past, which has no bearing on what happened to him in the store? And so she was just like, we got some work to do. I said, exactly. I said, and it's not we, it's you. Because I can't save my race. It has to be you. And so from that point on, we've been committed. Like, she'll send me books that she's been reading. We have dialogues about the conversation and what needs to happen next. And so my mentoring coaching for her is she doesn't feel she has a voice because she's a white woman. She doesn't feel and that's a different dynamic, because I didn't realize white women don't feel like they do have voices in the world. I didn't know that. So now she's trying to figure out exactly what does her voice sound like and how powerful really is it. And I made her do a test at work one day, because I can do that, because I'm the white whisperer, I can do that. And so I text her something while we were in the meeting to have her say it versus me saying it, because they know me, I'm the aggressive one. So I'm always saying something. So I had her say it. And it was taken completely different than if I would have said it. Mm-hmm. And she was like, Jaime, that felt so good. I said, good, do more of it. I said, because now you understand, if you feel how other people are feeling and you have that empathy for them, now you understand what it means to speak for other people. The thing that you always ask me to do when I get all the text message or the emails on the side, when you're all like, Jaime, thank you for saying, kind of what Kim and Michele, thank you for saying what I wanted to say. Now you say it. I said, because now I can go mute. Thank you. I can finally sit in a meeting and I can be me. I can sit and just be a coworker versus being the mouthpiece, because I hear all of y'all complaints and I hear everything that everybody's going through, and I'm the one that everybody assumes is going to say something. Now you can. God bless you. Thank you. And so now she's found her voice and she feels comfortable and confident to be able to go out into the world and speak her truth.
Wow.
I am, seriously. Because it's
So
not, I didn't, it's just, it's sad.
how do we direct our daughters?
It's so funny. I was having a conversation yesterday and something my daughter was trying to maneuver and somebody didn't do what they needed to do for her. And I told her, well, first you're going to gently ask the person again. And then I used the word gentle. She's like, why you got to be all aggressive? And I did, whenever somebody gives me feedback, I put it back in my mind to say, I must be coming off a bit aggressive. This has been an aggressive week. You know what I mean? So I told her, you don't want to be aggressive. You do want to be assertive. And I had to, and when they're grown, as we know now, you really have to learn how to say it. So I didn't want to say, didn't I raise you to stand up for yourself? In college, you learn for financial aid, the way we have to learn. But so I wanted her to know, you don't let people just forget about you. There's thousands of other people. You have to be assertive. So don't put on a mask and act like it's okay when something's not okay and somebody said that they would do something for you that's important. But it's interesting how she thought I was being aggressive by simply speaking my mind.
And I would say, it's funny because I just had this again with one of my coworkers. She's a millennial and she was being overlooked. And I said, I need you, and this is gonna sound kind of bad, but whatever. Judge your mom, but don't judge me. I told her, walk in your greatness, because your greatness is their mediocrity. We're always asked to play at a higher range. So you're already playing in the game at a total different level than they will ever play. And so you don't ever allow someone to make you feel less than what you are, because you're already bringing your best to the table. They're bringing average. So you continue being the best that you are and allow their average to be what it is, because it's always going to be that. And there will never be a comparison. So you don't have to worry about what they're doing, because you're doing what you need to be doing.
And then I guess also being vulnerable with them, letting them know you don't have it all together and what you needed to do, and taking your mask off, because sometimes we can have our mask on even at home with our daughters.
That's facts.
Which is a thin line. You don't want them to think that everything's not safe and stable. And then at the same time, because Crystal, I can really identify, I love when you guys had your daughters on, and I think I wrote you and she was like, oh my God, you're quitting your job. And I had that point of, oh my God, you're quitting your job. And so how do you not act like, no, everything is safe, when you're like, I'm gonna pull the hood. Like, how do you,
Real talk. Yeah.
Right. So it is a thin line.
Yeah, and what is the tipping point, right? Much back to Jamie, something you lifted up earlier, right? Like, I need to go be in their world because I need to learn how to navigate and really understand, right? So how much of the world do we expose them to, knowing, right? Like what is in front of them, and what they're gonna have to face being a Black woman in America, right? What is that tipping point? Do you show them stripped down, raw, unmasked, here I am, scared out of my mind, I'm about to quit my job and I'm going to do it anyway, versus mom's got it all together so she could see strength and heroism, right? Like, it's such a fine line, right? And that even almost feels like mask wearing.
But I like that, Michele, because this is the cool thing about the time we're living in right now. There are 6 generations. And so you have an opportunity to not only talk to your great-grand, some people have an opportunity to talk to their great-grandmother, their grandmother, their mother, their daughter, and their daughter's child. That is amazing. So you get to see what your generational curses are, and you can see which ones have been broken. And so you have an opportunity to be that mother that's raw, uncut. Let me show you everything, because what my mama did is what you can see. Go have a conversation with her so you can find out when she masked up and how detrimental that was for her, or how beneficial it was. Because now you get to have a conversation with 3 different generations who have 3 different perspectives of how even to look at it. And so I think for me, that's powerful, because it's one thing to just have your mother's perspective. It's a whole different thing to have your grandmother's perspective, because that's a whole different time and a whole different mindset of what femininity looks like and feels like in these here Americas. And then it's a whole different thing for your mother, it's a whole different thing for me, and it's a whole different thing for my daughter. So can I be totally vulnerable with her? Absolutely. But is there, like you said, there's a balance to it, because I still want you to have a conversation with your grandmother, because I want you to understand what the journey was to get me to be vulnerable with you, and why she's not vulnerable at all. And then vice versa, like I said, even go back even further to your great grandmother, why she is totally locked down, and all she can do is probably give you a hug. And maybe she might not, the words might not be like solid words of wisdom, but she can give you some nuggets that will carry you through. But then you have the mother that will have the actions that came from those words that make it real. And so that would be my thing, because I miss, trust me, I miss my grandmother to the heels, because like I said, even though she only had a 3rd grade education, she was brilliant when it came to how to handle people. And
Yeah,
that was
like,
awesome.
right, like we've been socialized for the power of what a degree is supposed to give, right? And I am clear, some of the smartest people in this world
Yes.
don't have letters behind their names, right? And so, yeah, that's that dominant culture value game that we play, that we have to have the letters. And so there's a mastery that has to be achieved. At the end of the day, can I come home and take off all the proverbial mask and recognize the person that's standing before me? And if the answer is yes, you've mastered it. You need to write a book so the rest of us can buy it, right? Like whomever you are. And if not, right, like if you can't stand and have that figured out, there's work to be done. There's absolutely work to be done. Coach Kim, Jamie, how can folks get a hold of you to learn more, to hear more, to get some advice and some coaching? Because at the end of the day, the mask that we can't take off is killing us. When we can't show up and be authentic selves, that we no longer recognize who we are for the cost we paid for wearing it. How can folks get in touch with you?
And the reason I say mask off, mask on, we cannot put the proverbial oxygen mask on that you're talking about until we take the mask off. So you can hang out with me at Coach Kim Bettie on all my social media. Bettie and Bettie like ready. Somebody was calling me Bettie last night. I'm like, it's Bettie. I know my mom spelled it fancy, but it's Kim Bettie with the IE. And kimbettie.com is my website. And I'm so pumped because there's going to be an app for that. My whole Greater for All is coming to fruition. And I'm almost there, where it can be like a Netflix subscription cost to like get coaching, like to hang out and get coaching and support you in getting your energy, your vitality, yourself back after you've been burned out and wearing that mask for too long and your ears are hurting. You know how it feels when that mask has been on your ears too long. So that's how you can reach me.
And I'm Jaime Odister on LinkedIn. My email is Time Consulting. Now, the funny part about time is it's TYME time, because I don't believe in wasting your time. And so that's one of the key things for me, is that, again, if it's everything we do is a mental shift. And so when you know that you're, like Michele said, when you know that you're ready to make that shift, hey, reach out to myself or Kim or even Crystal or Michele. Somebody will talk to you about your situation, because again, it's really just having that first conversation, even if it's with yourself, but make sure you're having it. Because the one thing we can't continue in this world is continue wearing the mask and thinking that we're okay, because we're not.
So I know, right? Like for many of the women, I'm sure that you've all talked to, Krista and I have had shared platforms with, the thing that keeps us from taking that first step is fear, right? Of the unknown. Even for those that are grounded in faith, right? They have been so beat up by the world, both in their homes and outside. How do you get over the fear? Right? Like the first thing we say, back to cliches, you just take the first step, right? Like, okay, yep, that's nice on the back of a card. And
Right.
how do I do that?
You know what? We really can't wait for motivation. We can't wait for the fear to go away. I mean, we really do have to make the first step. Like, my thing is, if you spend the time to listen to any broadcast, anytime, take one thing and do it. I call it experimenting, like experiment, no stress, just try it out, see how it goes. And then when you fail, because you probably will, it's doing what you say you're going to do, then learn from it. So just take a step and see it as a learning. It's not about perfection, but at the end of the day, you really do have to do something. You're never not going to feel fear. I was in tune with my body today. I'm like, oh, you feeling fear getting on the podcast? And I mean, this is where I live, but I still felt fear. And I was like, oh, this feels good. So, we can go into a whole nother thing about how to reframe what fear feels like. But if you're waiting for motivation, if you're waiting for the fear to go away, if you're waiting, for example, and you got the mask on and you can't breathe and you gain 80 pounds and you don't feel well anymore and your joints are hurting, like sitting and pretending is not going to help you. Take that mask off, go talk to a doctor and say, this is what's been going on with my body. You're going to be afraid. You might not feel motivated. That's just one example.
And I would also even push you even further, because I'm all about pushing people. Tell one person that you absolutely trust, because you need accountability. And that person, it's going to be a person that loves you enough that reminds you, and you're not going to be offended by their reminding. And so I would definitely, just one person and just one thing at a time. Don't take on a whole bunch of different goals, because I've come to the conclusion, when you take on more than one goal, you'll never get any of them done. And so the ideal is that's how you get over the fear of the failure, because failure is not a bad thing. I don't know where we got that from too. Another cliche I don't like. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure is actually a beautiful thing, because it's a learning lesson in the midst of it.
Mhm.
And so you get to see just how powerful you are in the midst of your failure, because if you could continue going at it, you'll see just how much stamina you really have for that thing. And you'll find out how much you're willing to give towards something. And you'll see how much more you can go before you decide to say, you know what, maybe that one is not for me. And then you know how to pivot now, versus just staying stuck in a rut. So tell that one person, let them be your accountability partner, and let them love on you in a way that can push you forward into your destiny.
Awesome. Both of those pieces of advice are priceless, right? Fear, if you're not facing it, that means your goal's not big enough. You're not challenging yourself. And the fear of removing the mask and discovering where you are, both Coach Kim and both Jaime have shared some really great advice. Start waiting on motivation and tell somebody you can trust that's going to help you. I really appreciate both pieces of that advice. And again, reach out to these dynamic women. They've got some tools that they're going to share with you, some resources, just a space to help you figure it out, how to take the mask off, how to identify who you are and what to do with that, so that the greatness that was established at birth can live into its fullness, because somebody's daughter, somebody's niece, somebody is watching and needing your greatness. So very grateful. I told you, the fastest hour of your day, it is upon us yet again. So very grateful. The start of a conversation, scratching the surface of really understanding. Find your tribe, continue to have this conversation, continue to challenge each other to take off the mask that is keeping you from being your authentic self, and to recognize the other ones that you need to pick up on occasion, right? Like, that's not what we're talking about. Talking about unmasking the one that's keeping you from being authentic. Jaime, I tell my training clients all the time, we end Monday to start our week after we finish our last session. I say to them, give them all they can handle and let them choke on the rest. Tell Granny you're making them choke and she would be proud. Don't ever stop giving them all they can handle. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate everything the two of you have shared tonight. Crystal.
So a little sponsorship message. Amazing Women Speak is sponsored by the Amazing Woman Network, which was ultimately created to unite and empower Black women globally, focusing on our core pillars of reclaiming our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, reclaiming our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. And I like to think that with every one of these conversations, we reclaim more of our personal power for sure. Please shop our retail line. shopawn.store. And whether you're seeing this live or on the replay, use the code SPEAK when you're shopping and receive 20% off of your purchase. You can see I am wearing Amazing Woman Established at Birth. And it is my reminder to the people, to the women that wear the shirt, and to the women and men that see you wearing the shirt, the sweatshirt, the hoodie, or even our signature fragrance, that you are amazing. And your amazing doesn't come from your title. It doesn't come from the commas in your, bank account or your salary or what you've accomplished. Your amazing was established at birth, right? And through life, it's been pushed aside. You've been told that you weren't amazing by others and by yourself. And it's time that we reclaim that we own it, honor it, and execute it every single day. I thank you guys so much for being here. Jaime, you said that thing about 6 generations, and it was so interesting that you said that, because I had just been studying some stuff where it says it takes 7 generations, right, to heal a thing. And so when you start talking about how it showed up differently in those generations, it just all made sense. So yeah, 7 generations to heal that thing. But I think, and I believe, Black women, I say it every time, we do it all, right? We are capable, we are great. We created the world, right? We birthed the world. We will continue to definitely change and empower the world. It has been a great conversation. As always, I'm excited and I am honored. Michele, thank you so much for doing what you do. Coach Kim, Jaime, you guys are awesome. You know it. Next week, please, no, there will not be a show next week. It's someone's birthday. So there will be no show next week. But join us in 2 weeks after that. We will be back with some incredible guests. Thank you again for joining us. I am Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman and I own my amazing.
Yes, you do. Another amazing conversation, Crystal. As always, thank you for being obedient to the call that God has placed on your life, that provides this platform for women to showcase and honor their amazing. We don't tell our stories enough. There are some amazing women in this world, and we just don't stop to celebrate our own greatness, right? We can tell the story of other great women, but oh, to tell our own. So what an honor it is to sit next to you every week as you make space for women to talk about their amazing. I'm grateful to be able to call you friend. My name is Michele Harper. I am a Black woman and I own my amazing. Kim.
My name is Bettie. I am a Black woman and I own my amazing.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for being here with us. Please tell us one more time, how can folks find you?
At Coach Bettie and kimbettie.com.
Thank you. Jaime, come on in here.
Well, I first want to say I want to give flowers, because flowers, I don't like giving flowers once you're gone. I want to give flowers while you're here. So Crystal, thank you for the invite. Michele, thank you for moderating. And Kim, thank you for being a willing vessel to be on this with me and going back and forth in a partnership of having the conversation. And I am Jaime T. Odister. I am a Black woman and I own my amazing, period. Because I also don't like that. I don't like that the millennials use that so often, but I like it at the same time. It's a bad thing. It's a bad business.
Thank you so much, ladies. To everybody that tuned in, thank you. We appreciate you, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Have an amazing rest of the day.